I married Jessica after a magical 2 years of dating, and for the first year, everything seemed perfect. Then we decided to start trying for a baby, and that was when my mother-in-law Sandra began to show her true colors. What started as subtle comments about my virility turned into outright accusations of being infertile. The real knife to my heart was watching Jessica slowly turn against me too, nodding along as her mother painted me as inadequate. The day Sandra announced to our entire family that Jessica would have grandchildren by now if she had married someone virile, and Jessica laughed along. I knew something had to change. Let me know where you are watching from, and subscribe to see how I went from being the family failure to finding true happiness and becoming a father to beautiful twins in the most unexpected way. Growing up in Chicago, I always imagined having a family of my own someday. At 32 years old, I had established myself as a financial analyst at a reputable firm downtown. My life was comfortable but somewhat predictable, until I attended my college roommate Anthony's wedding. That was where I met Jessica, a vibrant brunette with captivating green eyes who worked as a marketing executive. Our connection was immediate and electric. I remember feeling like the luckiest man alive when she agreed to dance with me. By the end of the night, I had her number, and within a week, we were on our first official date at a small Italian restaurant overlooking Lake Michigan. The conversation flowed effortlessly as we shared stories about our childhoods, our career aspirations, and our hopes for the future. Jessica and I dated for 2 years before I proposed during a weekend getaway to Door County. She said yes without hesitation, and 6 months later, we were exchanging vows in a beautiful ceremony surrounded by friends and family. Our first year of marriage was everything I had dreamed of. We bought a cozy townhouse in Lincoln Park, took weekend trips to Wisconsin, and enjoyed building our life together. Around our first anniversary, we had a heartfelt conversation about starting a family. Both of us were eager to become parents, and we decided to start trying right away. The initial months were exciting, full of hope and anticipation. Each month brought new possibilities, and though we faced disappointment, we remained optimistic. That was when I first met Sandra, Jessica's mother, who had been living in Florida until then. She moved back to Illinois, supposedly to be closer to her daughter, and immediately inserted herself into our lives. Sandra was a commanding presence, with perfectly coiffed silver hair and a way of making suggestions that sounded more like directives. From the beginning, Sandra made it clear that she was eager for grandchildren. During her first visit to our home, she brought a bag of baby clothes she had already purchased, and a family album filled with baby pictures of Jessica and her siblings. After 6 months of trying without success, Sandra began making subtle comments. During Sunday dinners, she would reminisce about how her late husband Martin had given her 3 children in 4 years. She would say things like, "There must be strong fertility genes in our family," and then glance in my direction. Initially, Jessica would reassure me afterward. She would say, "Do not mind Mom, she is just excited about being a grandmother." But as time went on, her reassurances became less frequent and less convincing. When we reached the 1-year mark of trying, I suggested we see a doctor just to make sure everything was okay. Our first appointment with the fertility specialist was informative but inconclusive. The doctor recommended basic tests for both of us and assured us that many couples take longer than a year to conceive naturally. When we shared this information with Sandra over dinner that weekend, she immediately suggested, "Maybe they should check you specifically." Christoph. Men often do not want to admit when there might be an issue. I was taken aback by her directness, but what hurt more was Jessica nodding along. On the drive home, I asked Jessica if she agreed with her mother, and she said, "It would not hurt to get yourself checked out more thoroughly, would it?" That night, we had our first major argument about our fertility journey. I expressed feeling singled out and judged, while Jessica accused me of being too sensitive and unwilling to face reality. After I went to bed, I overheard Jessica on the phone with Sandra, her voice a hushed whisper in our kitchen. The following week, we attended a family dinner at Sandra's new condo. Throughout the evening, she peppered us with invasive questions about our progress. "Have you been tracking ovulation? Are you taking supplements, Christoph? Maybe you should avoid hot showers, I read, that can affect sperm count." Jessica said nothing to defend our privacy, and when her cousin Ellie suggested changing the subject, Sandra dismissed her concerns. As the evening wound down, Ellie pulled me aside while I was helping with dishes and quietly said, "I am sorry about Aunt Sandra. Not everyone in the family thinks it is okay to discuss such personal matters." Her kindness was unexpected, but deeply appreciated during a time when I was beginning to feel increasingly isolated. As we entered our second year of trying to conceive, the pressure intensified dramatically. Sandra no longer bothered with subtlety. She arrived at our house one Sunday morning with a bag of bottles, which she presented to me at breakfast. "These are special fertility supplements for men," she announced. "My friend Donna's son had the same problem, and these helped him become a father." Jessica took the bag from her mother and placed it on our kitchen counter. "You should try them, Christoph," she said. "What do we have to lose?" Our intimate life, once spontaneous and loving, had devolved into a scheduled activity, dictated by ovulation tests and basal body temperature charts. Jessica became increasingly mechanical and distant during these moments, making me feel more like a donor than a husband. One evening I came home early from work and overheard Jessica on the phone in our bedroom. "I think he might be the problem, Mom," she was saying. "We have been trying for so long and nothing is happening." Her words felt like a physical blow. When I confronted her about the conversation, she became defensive. "Well, we have to consider all possibilities, don't we? Have you been taking those supplements my mother gave you?" The following month, Sandra organized a family barbecue at her condo complex. As relatives mingled around the pool, I overheard Sandra telling Jessica's aunt loud enough for nearby guests to hear they might need to consider adoption since Christoph can't give her children. I looked to Jessica, expecting her to correct her mother, or at least show some discomfort with the public discussion of our private struggles. Instead, she nodded along, a gesture that cut deeper than any verbal agreement could have. That evening, I suggested that we both undergo comprehensive fertility testing. We had only completed preliminary screenings, and I felt it was unfair for everyone to assume I was the source of our difficulties without medical confirmation. Jessica seemed oddly reluctant. "I do not think I need to be tested," she said. "The women in my family have never had fertility issues. My mom had 3 kids, my sister got pregnant on her honeymoon, and even my cousin Ellie's mother had 4 children." Her resistance made little sense to me, especially given how eager she was for me to be thoroughly examined. It was the first time I considered that there might be more to her reluctance than family pride. My male friends began to notice the change in my demeanor. During a poker night at my friend Tyler's house, he asked if everything was okay at home. I found myself unloading months of frustration, explaining how I had become the scapegoat for our fertility struggles. Tyler seemed concerned in a way I hadn't expected. "Have you considered that there might be another reason Jessica doesn't want to get tested?" he asked carefully. I dismissed his implication at the time, but his words stayed with me. Meanwhile, Sandra had taken our private struggle public. My coworker Brian, who attended the same church as Sandra, mentioned that she had been asking the prayer group to pray for her infertile son-in-law. I was mortified to realize that strangers were discussing what should have been a deeply personal matter. At social gatherings, I began to notice pitying looks from Jessica's friends. At a dinner party hosted by her college roommate Amanda, I overheard 2 women whispering and looking in my direction. "Poor Jessica," one of them said. "Such a shame when a man can't fulfill his basic duties." The breaking point came during Thanksgiving dinner at Sandra's house. The table was full with Jessica's extended family, including her cousin Ellie, who had remained consistently kind to me throughout this ordeal. As Sandra served the turkey, she raised her glass for a toast. "We have so much to be thankful for this year," she began before adding, "though I had hoped to be giving thanks for a grandchild by now. We all know we would have one already, if Jessica had married someone virile." The table fell silent except for Jessica, who let out a small laugh and raised her glass in agreement. I sat frozen humiliation, washing over me as 20 pairs of eyes turned in my direction. Ellie looked horrified, but she was the only one. I excused myself from the table, grabbed my coat, and drove home alone. That night I made an appointment with a urologist for a complete fertility workup, determined to face whatever truth awaited me. 2 weeks later I sat across from Dr. Patel as he reviewed my test results. "Mr. Christoph," he said, "I see no abnormalities in your results whatsoever. Your sperm count, motility, and morphology are all within normal parameters. There is no medical reason you couldn't father children. I felt a complex mixture of emotions relief, mingled with anger at having been blamed for so long without evidence. When I showed Jessica the results that evening, her reaction was not what I expected. "You probably manipulated the results," she said dismissively. "Or maybe you found some miracle cure right before the test. Either way, this doesn't change anything." Her response was so irrational that I began to wonder if Tyler's insinuation had merit. That night, while Jessica was showering, I did something I had never done before. I checked her phone. What I found confirmed my worst fears. There were dozens of messages between Jessica and a man named Robert, who appeared to be a coworker. The texts were intimate and included discussions about their relationship and how they would eventually be together. One message in particular stood out. Jessica had written, "I can't get tested because what if they discover I've been on birth control this whole time? I need more time to figure things out with Robert before making any decisions about children." The betrayal was so complete that I felt physically ill. Not only had Jessica been unfaithful, but she had also been actively preventing the pregnancy we had supposedly been trying for, all while allowing me to be blamed and humiliated by her family. The next morning, while Jessica was at work, I contacted a divorce attorney. The lawyer, a straightforward woman named Gabrielle Thompson, listened to my story with professional composure before outlining my options. Given the circumstances, she believed we could pursue a relatively clean separation, though she warned me that divorces rarely proceed without complications. That evening, I confronted Jessica with evidence of her infidelity and deception. At first, she tried to deny everything, claiming I had misinterpreted innocent messages. When I mentioned the birth control, however, her defenses crumbled. "Yes, I have been seeing Robert," she admitted through tears. "But you drove me to it, Christoph. Your obsession with having a baby and blaming me for not getting pregnant made me feel trapped. I needed someone who would just love me, without expectations." I was stunned by her ability to twist the narrative. I pointed out that she and her mother had been the ones fixated on pregnancy, constantly blaming me for our childless state, while she secretly ensured we would never conceive. As our argument escalated, the doorbell rang. Sandra had arrived, summoned by a text from Jessica. She burst into our living room without waiting for an invitation. "What have you done now?" she demanded, glaring at me. Jessica is in tears. Before I could respond, Jessica told her mother about my accusations. Sandra's face contorted with disgust. "You are truly pathetic, Christoph," she spat. "First you cannot give my daughter children, and now you invent these wild stories to cover your inadequacy. You never deserve it, Jessica." In that moment, looking at the two women who had conspired to demean and deceive me, I felt a strange sense of clarity and calm. I simply stated that I had filed for divorce and would be moving out immediately. Then I walked upstairs to pack my essentials, leaving them to process this information together. I moved into a furnished apartment downtown the next day. The following weeks were a blur of legal consultations, division of assets, and the painful process of informing friends and family about our separation. Jessica alternated between angry accusations and tearful pleas for reconciliation, while Sandra launched a campaign to paint me as the villain among our social circle. Amid this chaos, I received an unexpected message from Ellie, Jessica's cousin. She asked if I would meet her for coffee, expressing concern about how I was handling everything. Though hesitant, I agreed to meet at a cafe far from our usual haunts. Ellie arrived punctually dressed, simply in jeans and a blue sweater that matched her eyes. Unlike Jessica's carefully cultivated appearance, Ellie's beauty had a natural, unaffected quality. "I am so sorry about everything," she said after we had settled with our drinks. "I have always disagreed with how Aunt Sandra treated you, and what Jessica did is inexcusable." I was touched by her sincerity and surprised when she revealed that she had suspected Jessica's affair months earlier, after seeing her with Robert at a restaurant when Jessica had claimed to be working late. "You deserve better than what they did to you," Ellie said, reaching across the table to briefly squeeze my hand. That coffee meeting became the first of many. As my divorce proceedings continued, Ellie became an unexpected source of support and friendship. She listened without judgment as I processed my anger and confusion, and gradually I began to heal. I also began seeing a therapist, Dr. Marcus, who helped me understand that I had been in an emotionally abusive relationship. Recognizing this pattern was crucial for my recovery, and for ensuring I wouldn't repeat it in future relationships. 3 months after our separation, the divorce was finalized. I felt an overwhelming sense of freedom as I left the courthouse, legal papers in hand. That afternoon, I met Ellie for lunch to mark this new beginning. She raised her glass in a toast. To closing painful chapters and opening new ones, she said with a warm smile. A week later, Jessica called asking to meet. I agreed, curious about what she wanted. We met at a neutral location, a bench in Lincoln Park, where we had once spent happy afternoons planning our future. Robert left me, she admitted, not meeting my eyes. He said he never intended things to get serious. I made a terrible mistake, Christoph. We could try again. I will get tested, start fertility treatments, whatever you want. I was surprised by how little her offer affected me. I explained gently but firmly that our relationship was over, and no prospect of children could change that fundamental truth. The trust between us had been irreparably broken. As the seasons changed, my friendship with Ellie deepened. She was different from anyone I had dated before, thoughtful and genuinely interested in others. She worked as a pediatric nurse, and her stories about the children she helped were always filled with compassion and humor. 6 months after my divorce, I realized my feelings for Ellie had evolved beyond friendship. One evening after dinner at my apartment, I confessed these feelings, worried about jeopardizing our friendship. I have had feelings for you for months, she admitted with a blush. But given everything with Jessica, I did not want to rush you. Our first kiss that night felt like the beginning of something honest and real. We agreed to take things slowly, both aware of the complicated family dynamics at play. When Sandra learned about our relationship from a mutual acquaintance, her reaction was swift and venomous. She called Ellie, calling her a traitor to the family, and threatening to cut her out completely if she continued seeing me. Ellie stood her ground. I am sorry you feel that way, Aunt Sandra, she reported, telling her. But Christoph is a good man who was treated terribly by our family. I will not stop seeing him because of your disapproval. Jessica's reaction was more complex. She alternated between angry messages accusing us of betrayal and tearful appeals to both of us individually. Ellie handled her cousin's emotional outbursts with remarkable grace, always responding with kindness but firmness. After a year of dating, I asked Ellie to marry me during a weekend trip to Starved Rock State Park. We were standing at an overlook, the autumn leaves creating a canopy of red and gold above us, when I got down on one knee. You showed me what true partnership looks like, I told her. Will you continue this journey with me as my wife? Her yes was immediate and joyful. We married 3 months later in a small ceremony with close friends and Ellie's parents, who had welcomed me warmly into their family. Neither Sandra nor Jessica attended, though we had extended invitations as a gesture of goodwill. After our honeymoon in Maine, Ellie and I had a serious conversation about starting a family. We decided to give ourselves some time to enjoy being newlyweds before trying for children, both agreeing that our relationship needed to be our primary focus. A year into our marriage, we felt ready to try for a baby. Given my history, I was apprehensive, but Ellie approached the process with optimism and without pressure. 2 months later, Ellie woke me early one morning, her face radiant as she showed me the positive pregnancy test. The first ultrasound brought another surprise. The technician pointed out, not 1 but 2 heartbeats. Twins. I gripped Ellie's hand as tears of joy streamed down both our faces. The news of Ellie's pregnancy spread quickly through the family grapevine. Sandra, who had maintained her narrative that I was infertile despite all evidence to the contrary, was reportedly stunned into rare silence. Jessica showed up at our door unannounced one afternoon, her face pale and drawn. Ellie was at work, and I found myself facing my ex-wife alone for the first time in nearly 3 years. So it was never you, she said quietly. It was me all along. I invited her in, feeling secure enough in my new life to offer this courtesy. Over coffee, Jessica apologized for her deception and her cruelty. She had recently been diagnosed with a fertility issue that would make conception difficult. An ironic twist given the narrative she and her mother had pushed. I am truly happy for you and Ellie, she said as she was leaving, and I think I mean it. Watching her walk away, I felt the last of my resentment dissolve, replaced by a gentle pity and gratitude for the path that had led me to where I now stood. The birth of our twins, Amelia and Jack, was the most profound experience of my life. Holding their tiny bodies against my chest in the hospital room, I was overwhelmed by love and a fierce protectiveness I had never known before. Ellie's parents, Thomas and Marie, embraced their role as grandparents with joy and respect for our boundaries. They visited regularly but always called ahead, brought practical gifts rather than unsolicited advice, and seemed genuinely delighted by each new development in their grandchildren's lives. When the twins were 3 months old, Sandra appeared at our door, unannounced, bearing gifts and claiming grandmother rights. I answered the door with Jack in my arms, and for a moment, Sandra seemed too shocked to speak. "This is inappropriate, Sandra," I said calmly. "If you would like to be part of the children's lives, you need to respect our boundaries, beginning with calling before you visit." She protested, insisting that family should not need invitations, but I held firm. Ellie joined me at the door. Amelia cradled against her shoulder and reiterated our position. We would not expose our children to the kind of toxic behavior I had experienced. Sandra left in a huff, but over time her desire to know her grandniece and grandnephew led her to grudgingly accept our terms. Her visits remained somewhat tense, but she made an effort to restrain her controlling tendencies when it came to the twins. Jessica waited until the twins were 2 before reaching out again, sending a thoughtful card congratulating us on their birthday. The note inside included a sincere apology for her past behavior and a request for forgiveness without expectation of reconciliation. After discussing it with Ellie, I called Jessica and thanked her for the card. We had a civil conversation, and though I made it clear that we would never be close, I no longer harbored ill will toward her. Forgiveness, I had learned, was more for my peace than hers. As Amelia and Jack grew into lively 5-year-olds, I often reflected on the journey that had brought me to this point. What had once seemed like the cruelest betrayal had ultimately led me to genuine happiness and the family I had always wanted. The twins were bright, curious, and distinctly different personalities. Amelia had Ellie's thoughtful nature and my analytical mind, while Jack inherited Ellie's compassion and my love of adventure. Watching them play in our backyard, building elaborate worlds with nothing but sticks and imagination, I felt a contentment I once thought impossible. Our family was built on a foundation of mutual respect and honesty, values I was determined to instill in our children. Ellie and I made decisions together, supported each other's careers and personal growth, and never went to bed angry. The contrast with my previous marriage sometimes took my breath away. Life is unpredictable in both its cruelties and its gifts. The partner I thought would stand by me through anything instead joined forces with her mother to undermine my self-worth. Yet that betrayal ultimately guided me to Ellie, who showed me what true partnership means, and to our beautiful children, who fill our home with laughter and love. If you have ever faced betrayal or felt unfairly blamed for circumstances beyond your control, I hope my story offers some comfort. Sometimes what seems like an ending is merely a difficult but necessary redirection to where you truly belong. Have you ever experienced a blessing that came disguised as a setback? Share your story in the comments below. And if my journey resonated with you, please hit the like button, subscribe to hear more stories of overcoming adversity, and share this video with someone who might need to hear that sometimes life's deepest wounds can lead to a recent time's unexpected healing. Thank you for listening, and remember that your worth is never defined by those who fail to see it.